swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Let me, for the record, introduce myself and Mr. Kassab, and first explain why we are here and what we're trying to do here today. Today is June the 23rd, 1989. To my left is Mr. Alfred Kassab, known to most everyone as Fred or Freddie Kassab. My name is Jim Blackburn. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of North Carolina. During the late 1970s, and specifically in July and August of 1979, I was the primary trial prosecutor in the case of the United States of America versus Jeffrey Robert MacDonald. Dr. MacDonald at that time was a defendant in a federal criminal murder case. He was convicted by a jury of the second-degree murder of his wife, Colette MacDonald, the second-degree murder of his daughter, Kimberly MacDonald, and the first-degree murder of his daughter, Kristen MacDonald. After the jury returned its verdict of guilty on all three charges, MacDonald was sentenced by Judge Dupree to 3 consecutive life sentences in federal prison. MacDonald has now served a portion of that first 10-year term. It is our understanding that he may be eligible for consideration for federal parole on or about the 5th day of April 1991. Because of the uncertainty of the future for any of us, we thought it a good idea to put down for the record in the future both of our views as to our beliefs as to why we think MacDonald should be denied federal parole in 1991. And to that end, I am going to interview here this morning Mr. Kassab and ask him a number of questions. Before I do, let me say for the record that as the prosecutor in that case, I became convinced, was convinced, am convinced, absolutely beyond any reasonable doubt as to the guilt of Jeffrey Robert MacDonald and the murders of his family. I believe that Mr. Kassab is likewise so convinced. But to that end, I want to ask Mr. Kassab this morning a number of questions relating to his views not only of those crimes, but what it has done to his life and the life of his wife, Mildred. And let you, the parole commission, hear firsthand from him as to his experiences over the last 19 years. The murders did not occur until the 17th day of February 1970, so we're talking about a span of about 19 years. Mr. Kassab, you have been following this case, of course, since the murders were in fact committed the 17th of February 1970. Tell us, if you can, why your interest in the case has consisted at a high rate of interest for so long over the last 19 years.
Well, first, because of necessity, when your daughter and grandchildren are murdered, you're bound and determined that whoever committed the murders should be caught and punished. The case has dragged on over the years and has been in court and in and out of court for almost 19 years. And the intense publicity given to the case has kept us really involved physically and mentally.
When you say we, you're talking about Mildred.
Yes.
Mildred is not here today. Where is she?
And Mildred is home because I didn't want her to come because Mildred has had 2 heart attacks over the last 2 years, and I didn't want to put any more pressure on her. I feel, and she will so assert that I speak for both of us.
Now you live in Rockledge,
Rockledge, Florida.
How long have you lived?
We've
lived here for about a year and a half.
Where did you live prior to that time?
Prior to that, we lived in New Jersey.
Is that where you were living when these murders occurred?
No, we lived on Long Island when the murders occurred.
All right. Now, Colette was your stepdaughter.
That's correct.
And as such, there was no blood relationship. The fact that she was your stepdaughter as opposed to the fact that she was your natural daughter, did that make any difference in your desire to see if justice was done in this case?
None whatsoever. Colette and I could not have been any closer if I'd have been her natural father.
How old was Colette when you first met her?
When I first met Colette, she was approximately 13 years of age.
And what were the circumstances under which you met Colette?
I met Colette when I was courting her mother. It's quite a while back now.
Well, Kimberly and Kristen were, of course, not your natural grandchildren. What was the relationship that you had with your grandchildren?
Well, I had the same as any other grandparents. Colette, as often as I saw the children, we were just like grandfather and two granddaughters.
What about your relationship with Colette?
Colette and I were very close. Colette, as a matter of fact, she would never allow anybody to call me her stepfather. She always said, "That's my father." This is no, not meaning that she didn't love her own father, but he had died several years prior to that, and she and I had grown very close, and she considered that I was her father.
You know, Freddie, if I can call you that on this tape, you had also known Jeff MacDonald for a long, long time. When did you first meet MacDonald?
I first met MacDonald probably within a month or two after I met Colette for the first time, because at that time they were in junior high school together, and he would come over to the house and have dinner every once in a while, or he and Colette used to go to the movies, and I used to take them. Either I took him or I brought him home, one of the two.
This is when he was a teenager.
That's correct.
So they dated as teenagers before they were married.
Oh, yes.
It really did not surprise you, I take it, that they got married later on.
Oh, no. Didn't surprise me at all, because they went out together as children, and there was only a period of about, I think, a year or a year and a half where they weren't seeing each other, where they had a falling out, as most young people do. But aside from that, possibly a year and a half when they weren't together, otherwise than that, they were always together.
Freddie, what was Colette's feelings towards Jeff during those teenage years and prior to her marriage to him?
Well, I think that she liked him very much. She,
And you matter, she loved him.
oh, none whatsoever. She was deeply in love with Jeff, and there was never anybody else that I ever heard of, except one young man that she went out with once in a while during that period of a year and a half when they weren't seeing each other. But aside from that, it was all with Jeff.
I take it you and Mildred were pleased when they decided to get married.
Oh, yes. We had no objections to marriage, because he was a nice, presentable young man, good mind, got good marks in school, good potential for the future, so therefore we saw nothing wrong with them getting married.
When these murders first occurred and MacDonald was first accused by the military in 1970, you were widely quoted as being MacDonald's #1 defender and friend and fan, I suppose. Is that true at that time?
Oh, yes, absolutely, because when the murders occurred, I think I reacted as any other normal person would, with the crimes being as violent as they were and as horrendous as they were, that you could not attribute such a crime to somebody that you'd known for that many years. We just felt it was just out of the question that he could have committed that type of a crime. And the Army gave us absolutely no information on the crimes. The FBI would give us no information on the crimes. The only information we got was from MacDonald himself or what we read in the newspapers until the Army hearings were over.
You did not attend the Army hearings?
No. The Army hearings were closed to the public. They were closed to everybody except his mother. The special dispensation was given to her to attend the hearings.
Did you have a chance to read a daily transcript during the Army hearings? What was going on?
No. I didn't get a copy of the Army hearings until December of 1970, after MacDonald got out of the Army.
And you changed your mind, Freddie, concerning MacDonald's guilt in this case. Can you tell the parole commission when and why that occurred?
Well, it didn't occur all at once. The thing that first started me thinking was when MacDonald called me, I think it was somewhere around the 17th of November, after the charges had been dropped against him by the Army, and he told me that he had gone out on the town. He used the word we, as though there were other people with him, and that they were looking for these so-called hippie murderers, and that he found one and killed him. And now that made me a little uneasy. I investigated that situation and found it to be a fabricated story. But even that did not, of course, convince me that he had committed the murders. I thought he was just trying to make like he was a big shot. But when I got a copy of the transcripts of the Army hearing and I read them thoroughly over and over, I became pretty well convinced that he was guilty.
Did that conviction grow with time?
Oh, yes. It grew every day as I investigated what he had said happened in the house that night, and against the true facts that the Army had accumulated. Then I started working with the Army who reinvestigated the case for a second time, starting in 1971 through the middle of 1972, and I was privy to most of their investigation, and then became thoroughly convinced by the middle of 1971 that he was guilty.
Freddie, you once liked Jeff MacDonald. He was once the husband of your daughter Colette, the father of your two grandchildren, Kimberly and Kristen. Was it difficult for you to conclude that he wasn't guilty of these murders?
Very difficult. Because if you know somebody and that you assume is perfectly normal and a regular person, then to find out that they had committed such a horrendous crime, it is very, very difficult thing to swallow.
I remember Mildred saying to me one time many years ago that she thought the saddest thing of all was the fact that it was he who she became convinced had killed these people. Is that your feeling as well?
Yes, but it took me about 6 months to convince Mildred, after I became convinced, to convince her that he had committed the murders by showing her the proof.
Why do you think she resisted for some time?
It's because of the same feeling that I had originally, and it is the same feeling I think that almost everyone who meets MacDonald and talks to him. It has been shown by psychiatrists and psychologists that the man is what they refer to as a true psychopath. He is exceedingly believable when he talks to you, and he puts on an air of complete innocence, and he's convincing. He's very articulate. He doesn't shake very easily, as you know from having him on the witness stand. It comes across very well.
Is there any doubt in Mildred's mind today about his guilt in these crimes?
Not one iota.
Is there any doubt in your mind today about his guilt in these crimes?
None whatsoever. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond the shadow of a doubt.
Freddie, a number of people have asked me over the years, and I suspect have asked you as well, that you and Mildred have seemed to be obsessed about this case, that you have let it destroy or ruin both your lives, that you have spent time on it that perhaps would better have been spent somewhere else. And I think what I want you to do is just tell the parole commission, do you think You have been obsessed about this case, and is that something that you think you should have done?
Yes, I think we have been obsessed. And people have accused me of running a vendetta. But one must remember that everything that I did and that my wife did, our aim was to get the man tried and convicted. And everything we did was within the system, within the legal framework, if you will. It could have been very easy to seek vengeance outside of the system, but what I wanted was within the system to get him convicted, and it was done.
The fact that it's been in the courts so many times before the trial in 1979, and since then I think the U.S. Supreme Court 7 times, the fact that there's been continuing publicity about the case, and the fact that there's, as I said, been in the court so much, is this another reason why you have had to spend so much time on the case that you otherwise might not have spent?
Absolutely, because, as I said before, he is very convincing, and he's convinced a lot of people that he is innocent. What the information he gives them is the information he wants them to know. He doesn't give them the other side of the story, and so therefore, any time there's been publicity on this case with appeals, what is enumerated are the things that he appeals on and his side of the evidence, which I'll assure you most of it is fabricated. Some of it has been exaggerated. Other parts, they've taken the truth and twisted it. Now, when the public hears these things, they don't know about the evidence against him. That is not presented. What is presented is what he says, and that is wrong.
What do you think, Freddie, these murders and the aftershock of the murders and the 19 years since then and your interest and involvement in it, what has it done to your life and to Mildred's life?
Well, it's sort of put an end to our lives from what normally people do with their lives and go on. A lot of people, there have been a lot of other people who have had similar occurrences happen to them, but a given period of time after the occurrence, they have a chance to recuperate. We have never had that chance because this case has never been out of the headlines for 19 years. It has never been out of the court system for 19 years. I think it's the only case in history, murder case, that has been to the U.S. Supreme Court 7 times. And every time he has lost.
You have talked a lot about this case over the years. You have given numbers of interviews. You have been portrayed on television in a miniseries. You have been portrayed in a best-selling book. Has it been difficult for you to talk to people about the case? Does it bother you emotionally?
When I'm giving the interview or when I'm doing something, it does not affect me as much as when after I've done it, then it catches up with me immediately afterwards. Then I go home and I'm sort of incapacitated for a few days.
Do you and Mildred dwell on the case or the deaths of your family often?
Well, we had no choice. It's being so much in the foreground in publicity, so much publicity has been given to the case, and we have to stay on top of it because, for one, the purpose of this tape, I want to be sure that he serves out his sentence the way it should be served out. I don't want him walking around the streets.
How old are you now, Fred?
I'm now 68.
And Mildred is a little older.
Miller's a couple of years older than I am.
Which brings us to this question. What is it, in speaking directly to the Parole Commission, that you want the Parole Commission to do?
Well, I want them to consider very carefully the severity of the crimes, that two small children were murdered by their own father in a brutal way, and the Colette was murdered in a brutal way. It is my contention that had the jury stayed out another hour, that they would have come back with 3 murder ones rather than 2 murder twos and 1 murder one, because they would come to the realization that Colette survived the initial attack on her. Kimberly survived the initial attack on her, and it wasn't until maybe half an hour, maybe even an hour later, that he attacked them a second time. Now, if the jury just stayed out a little bit longer, I think you'd have got 3 murder ones.
So you don't think MacDonald could be paroled anytime soon, do you?
Not anytime soon. I think that since the court sentenced him to 3 consecutive life sentences, that consecutive means consecutive. And the theory of the U.S. Board of Prisons that they aggregate sentences, to me, is totally erroneous.
Freddie, what was Colette like?
Colette was just an ordinary all-American type girl who was extremely well liked by all her schoolmates and college mates. Girls all liked Colette. Nobody was ever jealous of Colette. She was a bright student. She was a good-looking girl, not tremendously beautiful, but a good-looking girl. And everybody liked her. I never met anybody that didn't like her.
Do you and Mildred miss Colette?
Oh, God, yes. And the children.
Life hasn't been quite the same.
It's never been the same since that day. Never been the same.
Freddie, is there anything else that you can think of, taking this opportunity, that you would like to say to the Parole Commission? Maybe something that I haven't asked you about, but something that's inside here that you would like to summarize your feelings about this?
Yes, and that is that MacDonald has never shown any remorse. Of course, as a psychopath, he could care less whether he killed 2 people or 100 people. It wouldn't make any difference to him in his mind anyway. And some people might say, well, he'll never commit another crime like that. But he might. And this does not absolve him of the crimes that he has committed. And that for anybody to assume that serving 10 short years in prison for a crime of this type is totally insufficient.
Anything else you want to say? You can...
No, except that I would beseech the parole board to think very carefully and to thoroughly follow the guidelines that have been set down for consideration of parole in a case such as this.
I would like to also take just a moment to express to the members of the Parole Commission my own personal views about MacDonald and my own personal views about what the Parole Commission should do with respect to the decision that it has to make. I was an assistant United States attorney when I assisted in prosecuting MacDonald 10 years ago. I'm in private practice today. I am no longer with the government. Though 10 years have passed since that time, rarely does any day go by that someone does not mention to me something about the MacDonald case, or it come up in my own mind about the MacDonald case. I think once you're involved with this particular situation and the tragedy that occurred to these people, You cannot get over it. I spoke to Mildred just 2 days ago on the telephone, and she said to me how sad it was, but 10 years later, we were still all so touched by what happened 19 years ago. There is a temptation because of the passage of time to forget or let it go away or sweep it under the rug as though it did not happen or it was not as bad as what occurred. I would urge the Parole Commission to remember that Jeff MacDonald is not the victim in this case. He is the only one alive who was in the house that night in February of 1970. He has been prosecuted vigorously both in the trial court and in the appellate courts for a number of years. But that is what should have happened, for he was the perpetrator of these crimes, not the victim. He is the one who caused these trials to take place and these appeals to take place, not the other way around. I would urge the Parole Commission, as Freddie has said here so eloquently today, to remember Colette and Kristen and Kimberly MacDonald. They would very much like to have been here through these last 19 years and to have had the opportunity to live their lives out to the full length of the line, which they should have been allowed to do. MacDonald had no right under any law to take their lives from them. Yet the evidence is overwhelming that he did so. A jury of 12 believed that he did so and convicted him. And the appeals from that case were all affirmed ultimately by the United States Supreme Court. I know that the last number of years perhaps have been difficult for MacDonald, his family, and friends. But they have likewise been exceedingly difficult for Mr. and Mrs. Kassab and their friends. But perhaps it has been most difficult of all for those who are not here, Colette, Kimberly, and Kristen. It would be a tremendous tragedy for the Parole Commission to determine that MacDonald had suffered enough by 1991 and to release him on parole at that time. Because Colette and Kimberly and Kristen aren't going to be on parole ever again. I would urge as strongly as I know how that the Parole Commission deny in 1991 any parole for MacDonald and that he should serve his sentence as Judge Dupree gave it to him, because he took 3 lives, not just one. And those life sentences which he was given were not concurrent sentences, they were consecutive. He should be required to serve those sentences for the just punishment for those horrible acts which he committed. As was stated a long time ago in the courtroom, it is so late in the day. It is time that someone speak for truth and justice and keep MacDonald in prison. Thank you. There is one final thought that I wish to add on behalf of Mildred, behalf of Freddie, on behalf of Brian Murtaugh, who also assisted so tremendously in the prosecution of this case, and without whose help it could certainly not have been won, is the thought that I tried to express to the jury 10 years ago in my closing argument to that jury. An expression of what all of us in that courtroom felt for Colette, for Kimberly, and for Krista. If in the future you should cry a tear, cry one for them. If in the future you should say a prayer, say one for them. And if in the future you should light a candle, light one for them.